Evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us again on the Coach's Corner. We have something of a bonus episode for you. Just one we wanted to throw in real quick. We have a very special guest with us tonight. We have His Royal Highness Atilius Primus Castus, who just recently won Artemisia's crown list. And for those of you who have been paying attention over the last 5 years or so, back in the early days of the Great Plague and the pandemics and the shutdown, Atilius had done a show early on that was 5 methods for becoming a better fighter. So now that he's made good on those 5 things, or the multitudes of those things, we thought it'd be fun to have him on to kind of talk about how his training has changed, and kind of what he's been able to use and pick up to kind of make good on some of that. We've got His Grace Brannos joining us tonight as well. Always a pleasure. And got Tristan in the background doing the production for us, and he may pop in if he's got something wisecracky to say. Brannos, you got any quick comments?
No, it was interesting. We kind of covered it before the show. I knew, we had Atilius on a number of times. Actually, he was on one of our earliest shows. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the stage for a sec. And so his first show was pretty much our 9th show was one with him. He did a great job on injury prevention. That was a really some of the parts that we were trying to cover early is, just give people a chance to recover from injuries because we knew we were going to have time and think about what might be causing them, and also be careful going kind of forward with new things they were going to do during the pandemic. So it was a very good episode. And then after that episode, you actually did one with Helga, and he participated in, and we'll talk about this one more later, and he participated in a video review for, he sent up some video. And, what's really cool about that was, obviously, Sean, we've talked about it. It's like to have your stuff reviewed in front of everyone is, it takes a little bit. There's not a lot of people, review one-on-one tends to be relatively easy, but when you're reviewing it in front of an audience, you kind of have to let it hang it out. And none of us are perfect. So it was nice that Atilius wanted that help, right? And thank you for that, because I think that was a great episode. And then the last one he did was, I think it was, let's see, what do I have? 120 or 120th episode. And that was another, the good part was that was another injury, dealing with injuries video, not, how to prevent them, but actually how to deal with them at the time, something you had going on. And we've been, that's kind of a hot subject for all of us, because we're dealing with injuries all the time and how we move on. And he was nice enough to come and try to help everyone work through some of those things. And here we are today, at episode, I think 196. And so, yeah, I know it's kind of a path, in April, it'll be 5 years, and, here we are, and it's great to have you back, and especially for this scenario. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess without further ado, Your Highness, would you be kind enough to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
And, let us hear a little bit about your origin story. How you got started?
You got it. So I'm Atilius Primus Castus. I come from a mercenary household known as Black Company. I started back in 2004, was my first time ever really learning about armor. It was the first time I ever went to Estrella. I didn't fight that year because I didn't have armor. I didn't even know it existed until I saw the magnitude of what Estrella was back then. And one of the movers and shakers of the house told us that year that he said, if you don't get into armor within the next year, that he was going to end up leaving the house. And so me and a couple of our close friends gathered up all the armor we could and started fighting. And then we went and fought the following year. So that's how I started. There was I posted on my social media yesterday or the day before, just one of the, what is there, like 6 or 7 of us. Your squire, Daniel the Blind, is in that picture. He was part of Black Company back then too. Well, it was more in those days, but yeah, that's where we started. I had blue jeans on and a ragtag bunch of misfits is the best way to describe it. A bunch of angry hostiles. So moving forward, it was always kind of us versus them. Again, I've been kind of telling this story through posts on social media the last couple of days since winning Crown. I've got a lot of questions about swearing fealty and how that works in a mercenary house where typically we don't swear fealty to the Crown. We swear it in Black Company, we swear fealty to the Phoenix, which is essentially the same thing, just this way versus to the Crown. Lost my train of thought. Sorry. Fealty. And it's been, like I said, it's been a question amongst the kingdom about that side of things because they didn't quite understand what was happening. So when in Black Company, a lot of things have been changing. A lot of people have been doing a lot of work to make it work between the kingdom and mercenary households to make it so that we can play both. And it's one of those things, like just changing times. There's a lot of thinking errors and a lot of critical errors in the way we perceive things, the way the kingdom perceived things, and through growth and lots of conversations and working together and communicating and kind of seeing like, well, this is how we do things and this is how they do things. And then we find we've been able to establish common ground. I'm not sure if this is really where you wanted this introduction to go, but it's kind of.
Oh, it's interesting though. We had a Merc episode just like this, actually.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna talk about it. I mean, Lash was on for that one.
Oh, was he?
And I think Lash at the higher level of the Black Company, I think he was a really great conduit between the people that, I mean, there's some folks in the Mercenary Corps that are on the fringe by design. Like they want to be in the shadows a little bit. They don't want all the pomp and circumstance and all that. But the SCA is the environment where they can do that. And I think Lash has been a great ambassador for mercenary households at large. And I mean, he's Master at Arms and now a Pelican as well. And I think there's a lot of Lash and yourself and several others who are, really kind of understood that two things can be true, right? You can, you kind of need the SCA to be a mercenary, right? That's,
otherwise we're just gonna be fighting ourselves.
Yeah. And and there's not many, because like I said, a lot of folks that end up with Black Company are there by design, and they are there because they want to be on the fringe, and that's great. But like you said, as more and more of you start doing more work throughout, it kind of, it changes your level of participation for sure. And then, it kind of changes your ambitions, and here you are.
Yeah. So that kind of got me back on track. Going back to the angry miscreants that we were, it was very much kingdom or us or like kill or be killed. You were with us or you were against us. And that actually ended up being kind of detrimental to my SCA career up until, like we were talking before the show, about 5 or 6 years ago, pre-COVID. It's when I realized that I couldn't be this angry person anymore towards the kingdom, because honestly, we grew out of that mentality. And it's just like you said, Sean, like, if you want to play the game, you're going to have to play with us too. Like, that's the way it is. And after extensive conversations and Lash and myself and a couple others of talking to you guys and hanging out, we buried the hatchet, and we realized that, guys aren't that bad, and you're literally just here to help. I think you said it best when I first started the 5 Method show. I was like, hey, I could use some help with this. Would you be willing to help me with this? And you told me like point blank, like all you had to do was ask. And I know that's came up in multiple episodes throughout 5 Methods, throughout my SCA career. It was like, and guess what? All you had to do was ask.
Yeah. I mean, we joke about it, right? It's like, you need to tell me all I have to do is ask these people, and they're just going to say yes.
They're just going to do, and it's happening right now, being crowned. All you have to do is ask, and literally people will say yes. And you don't, I say as crowned, but, or an aspiring crown, soon to be, as a royal, I guess would be the best way to put it. You don't have to be that either. Like, that's the thing. You don't have to win crown to get help from people in the SCA. Like it's mind blowing how much people just genuinely want to see you reach your dreams or live your dreams in the game. So being shown that and seen that, I found Sir Gregor Hawk's YouTube channel. I would highly recommend you guys look that up. He does a lot more gaming stuff now, but he's got some phenomenal Pell work drills, and he breaks them down step by step, footwork down to the tee. It's great stuff. It's where this was kind of just before I started hanging out with the Kingdom types. I was trying to find avenues to get better because I was stagnant. Again, we're about 15 years into my SCA career, and I was getting burnt out. I didn't know how to improve my fighting. And so I started searching YouTube and found a bunch of Pell work videos from him. I ended up adding him on Facebook, and then he introduced me to the 100-day Pell Challenge by Sir Brailthen. Sorry if I totally destroyed her name, but and I joined that, and then I did it. And Vigabrander here in the Shire in Utah, he invited me out to go fight with Duke Timmer and Duke Sean, and that was it. Like, that's when my training really began, because I realized that, yes, I was at the peak in Black Company, but there was an entire ocean of much better fighters than I could ever perceive, and I was very humbled that day. And so that's kind of where our story began, was that day, and where I literally kind of just took off with it. And that was back in, what was he saying, 2019? So just
2019,
just right before COVID. So that's where that's my story in a nutshell for the introduction.
Well, and I can tell you, it's sort of the flip side of that is, like you're saying, all you got to do is ask, right? And I tell people all the time, now, you like, if you want to be better, right? We all want to be better as fighters, right?
Yep.
I don't care how good someone is, and I don't care how good they're not. The only thing I care about is whether or not they want to be better than whatever they are now.
Yeah.
Because and I know Brannos as a high profile figure. I know he gets targeted a lot too. And there's people that just want to come out to the field and just say that, I went 2 out of 3 with Brannos,
Yeah.
And then I left because I didn't want to see how it goes after 8. Right. And there are people out there that just want to count Q, and they just want to say they scored some points on somebody. I'm not impressed. Not impressed with somebody coming out and laying a bunch of stick on me. I'm impressed by somebody saying, who does lay a bunch of stick on me, that then says, how do I get better? Where do I go from here?
Yep.
And at the time, you were really easy to work with, because you came right to us and just, how do I get better? Yep. And that's it. And there's a level of humility there that is powerful, I think, certainly beneficial. I mean, to all of us. I mean, when I got out to Pennsic last year and fought Brannos for the first time in God knows how long, I mean, it's being able to, sure, we had the fight, but it's the discussion afterwards.
Yeah.
And being able to, I mean, get 2 fighters at the top level of our sport who are then trying to make each other better.
Yep.
So I don't care how good you are. I don't care how good you're not. I just care that you want to be better. Because if you just want to hit me, you just want to say you beat me up at on the field. Great, good for you.
And that really leaves you with a short career, really. I mean,
does.
the idea is if you want a longer career and you want this to be part of your life, then just beating up people isn't all be all of SCA combat, right?
Yeah.
And just Atilius, just like you're going to find out even more so that there's a lot of work around doing what you do, not only becoming a better fighter, but becoming a better person for everybody in the SCA, and hopefully a career of learning, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because that's really what we're looking for.
Yeah. And yeah, you got that target on your back now, so you're gonna have some good times with that, and I think you come to this with a certain humility already, and I think part of that comes from your experience in the black company, and like you said, you kind of at the top of the pile in the black company, but then you come out here and you fight us, and you're like, holy cow, there's so much of a greater world out there, and now that you're in a high profile position, you're gonna find even more, right? I occasionally run into people that say, oh, well, Sean's the best fighter I ever fought. I'm like, really? Let me introduce you to some of my friends.
This guy.
I got all kinds of people who I think are better than me. So yeah. I'm happy to introduce you to that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a high profile position for sure. And you are going to have those people that say, I just beat up on the King of Artemisia.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Get in line. Like it's not the first time.
There'll be a line with a certain there will be a line for sure. And yeah, I mean, that's there's the two sides of it. There are the people who want to test themselves, right? They're the people who just want to say they laid stick on the King of Artemisia. And then there are people who actually genuinely want to work with you and want to make you a better fighter. I remember I was crowned at Penzica in 2012. And I was out there in the middle of the field, and right in the middle of a fight, Ron Valder comes right up to me and he's like, hey man, check this out. And he's like adjusting some stuff. And he's like, try this and try this. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And I knew, like, he knew that I was genuinely interested in just wanting to be better, even though here I am the King of Artemisia, right? But he knew that he didn't have to ask permission. Oh, Your Majesty, might I, give you some information? He knew that I wanted it, and he just came right up and gave it right to me right then and then, because the crown only lasts 6 months. But like Brannos said, if you're a student of this for life, then it doesn't matter when somebody gives you that information that you need. They can come up in the middle of the fight in the pickup and change your whole world. Right?
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
We do have a question, and I thought it was a pretty good one here. The question is, for His Highness, was the Crown the first major tournament you finaled in? If so, can you describe the headspace going on in the finals?
It was not. Well, I mean, in this magnitude, yes, this was the first major tournament. It's Crown Tournament. It is like
it's the first Royalist for sure.
But I previously in 2020, the very last Australia, I ended up winning the unbelted tournament. The headspace, I mean, this was a little bit of a difficult. The Crown Tournament was a little bit difficult in terms of the headspace, because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that I didn't realize was going on. And part of me, honestly, I've talked to a couple of nights about this, is I feel kind of irresponsible for winning Crown, because I didn't quite grasp the magnitude of the things that I have to do now. I knew that it was going to be big, but I didn't know it was going to be this big. So I can give you a play-by-play of what happened if you guys want, for the last little bit of the last 3 matches of Crown, or the last 4 matches, or 2 matches of Crown. In the pools, I got beat by one person, and it was Sir Magnus, Stonecutter, and just a great stick. Swings hard, super fast, very, very similar to my style. We're very physical, very strong, and
stupid Romans.
Stupid Romans is exactly. And he was very good at sucking me into his fight and getting me to react off of him. And he likes to fight very close in, I call it C range. Some people call it A range. I say C because it's close.
Yeah.
And so we'd stand and bang. And he would end up I legged him. And on the way down, he came across the top and hit me with an offside as he was falling to his knees. Rookie mistake. We all make it. We all know that you can throw a shot as you're falling, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to land if your opponent's not paying attention. And I was sleeping, so he tagged me. And then
did you drop your guard after you took his leg, thinking he was just going to go down?
Yes, that's not all the way, but just enough that he could come up over the top and ping me in the grill.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, just enough. Yep. And so
you stopped fighting.
Yeah. So
I think that becomes a mental break, right? I mean, in some ways, what happens, you're not necessarily stopping fighting, but there is a pause in that fight that's occurring, and
there's capitalized on it.
Decision that has to be made. There's a reaction that has to be made, and people don't realize that in those times are weakness.
Yep. Yeah. And he capitalized on it, and so I took the loss, and then we met again the first round of the semifinals, which was double elimination, best of 3. So
it was the quarterfinals. We had eight fighters in the quarterfinals, and it was a bracketed, double elimination, best 2 out of 3.
Yep. So, and same thing. I got stuck into his fight, and
you got him the second fight because you fought Danny in your first fight.
Did I fight Danny? Yes. Okay, you're right. I fought Danny the first fight and ended up. Who did he fight this? Yeah. Anyway,
I think he fought Crispin the second fight.
Okay. Oh yes, because Crispin got him with a wrap. That's right.
Yeah. So you beat Daniel in the first round, and then you got Magnus.
Okay. You're right. Yeah. Thanks for the correction. So
it was a winners losers bracket.
Okay. Yep. So I bested Daniel the Blind. Sorry, and then I fought Sir Magnus again, and very similar fight. Stand and bang, got sucked into his fight and was being more counter-offensive, like trying to change the pattern of the fight, his pattern. Try to interrupt his rhythm,
tempo.
And I just couldn't get on top of it, and he ended up just outworking me and ended up catching the same shot. I legged him, and then I took a big step back.
He can't be taught.
Yeah, and then it was very similar. I think he was coming to the offside, coming this way to drop into his offside ribs, and he just came over the top and caught me in the grill again. So that was my first loss, and I stepped outside. I took a breath. I was mentally reviewing what was going on, like why I was losing the fights, and it clicked. I was like, you're not fighting your fight. You're fighting his fight. You're letting him suck you in, and you're losing ground that way. And so I'm a man of faith. I said a quick prayer. I also have a pre-fight ritual I stole from the movie Gladiator, where he scoops up a pile of dirt and rubs his hand together and then smells it. I do something similar. So I walked outside, I found some dirt, I rubbed my hands in it, smelled it, and walked back in, and it was like a light switch went off. And the next 2 fights were against Thorhall and Crispin, and it was very much a different fight. I stayed in A range, so I was away, and then I was in and out of A and B range pretty significantly, throwing a lot of thrusts and feint shots and catching legs, and ended up beating them both. And then it was back to Magnus, and I was like, okay, this is it. It's like make or break time. Like if you don't win this one, you're done. And
so at this, I'm going to throw in here. At this point, Duke Yuri was in the finals because he was clean through the winners bracket, and so Atilius and Magnus had to fight again to find out who would fight Yuri in the finals.
Yep. So this was to go into the finals to fight Yuri for Crown. And I did not let him stuck me in this time. I stayed at range. He tried to corner me a couple times, and I just stepped out of the corners and just worked. I tried to work his shield. We'll go into this a little bit later. The physical conditioning for Crown that I had done beforehand. I purposely threw high shots, high thrusts to the upper part of his helmet to get him to lift his shield up, and then I purposely dropped to a deep wrap or a deep leg to get to just sit there and move that shield up and down. And then I want to say I ended up laying him again, and then we ended up standing and banging for quite a while, and I ended up catching with an offside shot. The first fight I don't remember quite as well as the second one. So it was kind of cool though, because I knew that I was no longer fighting his fight, and I was not letting him suck me into the fight. I was doing my fight, and it was a totally different story that second round. But it was still like not trying to brag or anything like that, because it was still a very, very intense fight, like regardless of what was said, what happened. Yeah. And then that kind of instilled some confidence in me, because I had lost to this guy twice in a row. And I had beat Yuri already in the pools. So I was like, okay, Yuri's he's a great stick, but I felt like I had that edge over it. But then going into it, the poor guy, I threw a thrust over the top of his shield within like the first 15 seconds of the fight, and hit him with a thrust. And it was pretty sad. And then the second fight, he was a lot more awake, and it was a lot more intense fight, but it was still the same, like in and out, throwing feints, trying to work outside, work inside, not getting sucked in. And then I ended up taking his leg and then coming up across the top with an offset shot, ended up killing him in that one too. So it was difficult mentally, because I went into the finals or the semifinals with the loss, and then I'd lost twice to the same person. So it's kind of cool to get those wins, or that win back. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it's really important that process, that you were able to take that loss, and in the middle of that, to make those adjustments. And to recognize that, that he was sucking you into fighting his fight, and you weren't fighting your fight. Because whatever your fight is, that has to be, it's either good enough or it's not, right? And it has to be good enough to compete anywhere. But I've been in the finals of Crown where I was trying to be something that I'm not, and it did not go well. That's when I, final with Duke Floki, for our 20-year crown. I was like, I got to switch things up so I can surprise him.
Yeah.
And it was a disaster. The first fight that I had in the finals with him was literally 4 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And it was after that I was like, look, you got to fight your fight. This is something that Alan on had talked about on several of our shows previously, that, he went to like one of the first crowns that he was in, that he thought he was going to do well in. And he's like, I'm going to go to bed early, and I'm not going to drink, and I'm not going to do all this other stuff. It's like everything that he was doing, with like none of that was anything that he had done to prepare. Like, that's not how he trains. And so you're coming into Crown trying to be something that you're just not. And so for you to recognize that in the middle of those fights, and to acknowledge that I'm not fighting my fight, this is not who I am, and taking that pause and coming back into it, and saying, you got to fight your fight, because again, at some point, you have to trust your fight. This is something that, Duke Brennan, out in the East, he told me a story about one of the first crowns he won that was like throwing the cutter, right? And it's a great story. We'll have to have him share it at some point again. But you got to be who you are, right?
Mhm.
Because if you're trying to be something that you're not, that's not what you've trained yourself to do. And who you are as a fighter, that has to be enough.
Yep.
And and if
At least for that moment.
What's that?
At least for that moment.
At least for that moment, right? And that's that's the thing. It needs to be enough for you. Like at the very least, it needs to be the most accurate reflection of who you are as a fighter right now. If you need to be better, then you can fix that afterwards.
Yeah.
But in the moment, you've got to be whoever you are in that moment, and you just have to be content with that being enough. I've lost the finals of Artemisia Crown 8 times. And I'm okay with losing to somebody who was just better.
Mm-hmm.
I am not okay with losing because I didn't put my best fight out there on the field. And when I lost to Floki trying to be something that I'm not, I tip my hat to him for sure. He definitely beat me, but like that is not who I was as a fighter, and I was really not happy with that.
Yeah.
And that was a lesson I had to learn. Again, it's a lesson I teach a lot, and it was a lesson that as many times as I had one crown to that point, it was a lesson that I had to learn for myself again.
Yeah, it's definitely something I have not experienced that per se in the SCA standards, but part of the last couple of years I've started jiu-jitsu, and doing jiu-jitsu tournaments is pretty humbling when you catch yourself doing that same thing, and you're like, why did I try to do a move that I've never done before and then end up getting countered and tapped out? So I think you've said that to me too before in the past, of like when I've asked you like, what can I be doing for Crown? Like, what should I be doing for training Crown? And you say, well, when's the next Crown you're fighting in? And if I say a month, you're going to say, don't change anything. Just keep doing what you're doing, because if you try to change stuff now, you're going to try to throw it in Crown and you're going to lose. For that same principle, it's the time to change stuff for Crown for Artemisians is right now, because we have 6 months until the next one. So now's the time to start working on things that you need to do.
Yeah.
Well, technically, I mean, you should have started yesterday. But
yeah.
Cool.
I was going to say, you should be doing it all the time. I mean, it's one thing that I talk about all the time is that, people like, I'm training for Crown. I'm not a huge believer in training for Crown. I train every day just to be a better fighter. Crown just is a byproduct of what you've been training for, right? It's no different. The belt, the chain, and all of those things. Those are things you find along the way.
Yep.
But they're not the stopping point or the end point. They're just things that come along. And I think Crown can. I mean, I looked at Rongvalder before, and when long time ago, and he asked, what do I have to change to win Crown? And I'm like, well, first stop trying to win Crown. I said, if you're going to be the best fighter in our kingdom, and hopefully the society, that's where we drive to. But if you're going to be the best fighter in our kingdom, not even the best fighters come to Crown.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's any given day. Crowns are, it's just another tournament. Now, the pressure around what you have to do after is a whole different animal that brings you there. But realistically, you just have to keep training, and that really becomes the critical piece. Is the one thing I probably do if somebody says before Crown is like there's not a lot to learn, you should have learned it already, is there is a confidence game. So go out there, find some smaller tournaments and things like that. You can bring your fight to those places and really hone and watch. Don't try to change, but really hone your skills and be confident that you have a really solid footing within your discipline.
I agree with that. Wholeheartedly agree with that. So yeah, where are we going now?
No, I'm going to jump on that too. I mean, it's it's all part of the process. And Guillaume, one of our producers, had just mentioned. I don't know if I can bring up that comment, but
I'll bring it up for you.
Yeah, it's like I'm just trying to be a better fighter, and Crown is just a test, right? In my training methodology, I talk about training, practice, and evaluation. Crown Tournament is the evaluation that we have, right? And as Brannos said, it's not the best evaluation, right? Because you're not fighting against the best fighters in the kingdom, right? But it is the most consistent evaluation that we have, because everybody that is in that tournament is fighting at their best, and they are trying to execute the best fight that they possibly have, because there's simply nothing like Crown Tournament. And if you want to have your fight evaluated, and if you want to have your failures exposed, Crown Tourney is absolutely the place to do that. There is no test like Crown Tourney. Like I said, we can do some pickups, and I can give you probably a better evaluation and tell you where you need to go. But there's something about that environment, because the stakes are so high, that I tell a story all the time about before Duke Timmer, one of my squires, had won Crown. He was a knight. He was thinking he was going to do pretty well in this list, and I'd been telling him for some time that you have this deficiency. And he wasn't ignoring it, but still just didn't sink in until he got into this Crown, and he lost 2 fights because of that deficiency. And it wasn't until he lost those fights, when it mattered, that suddenly that was a thing that became a focus, and that was a thing that needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed right now. And that is the value of Crown Tournament in the process, in getting better. And Brannos had just touched on it. One of the key pieces of advice that I give to people, especially people who have been to the semis and the finals, have been deep in Crown and just can't get over the hump. The thing that I have said to people that most often gets them through is when I tell them, forget about winning the list. Forget about winning Crown Tourney. And it's not that you shouldn't want to, but you have to forget about winning Crown Tourney. You have to forget about what this all means, and who's going to be my head of retinue, and who's going to be the captain of the guard. Because if you're thinking about all that, you're putting the guard
out there anyway.
And you are not thinking about just executing the best fight that you have in that moment. So you have to forget about winning Crown, because like all that chatter and all that clutter that comes into your head when you're thinking about external things, and Atilius, as you just found out, there are those people that would be like, well, who's going to do this and who's going to do that, and who's like, what am I going to do with all this? But as you just found out, as soon as you win, when you hadn't thought about any of that stuff, right? You hadn't thought about who's going to do who's going to be your head lady in waiting, the captain of the guard, and all this. You didn't think about any of that. And what you find is you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, because when the list happens, you will have people throwing themselves at you.
Yes.
I want to do this job for you. I want to do this job for you.
100%.
I want to do this job. You don't have to worry about like who's going to do all that stuff, because there are people that have been wanting to do that job for you anyway. And all that stuff just falls into place. But it's not going to, but none of that matters
in the list.
In the list.
In the list, right. You got to win first before that matters.
That's right. Yeah. And every fight is a fight, right? You got to win every fight, and God knows you don't ever win every fight all the time, but that your goal is to present your best fight to your opponent. Keep your mind straight, keep it on a single thing, and that is to defeat your opponent in that list with the techniques and the foundation that you built.
Yep.
I agree.
So I got a little bit. Anybody?
Sure.
So we watched these last night. We'll just. It's not that long, so we'll just watch. If you don't mind, watch a little bit of Crown, and then.
Oh boy.
I think it's just the finals that we have here. So let me pop that up.
Sure.
Oh, come on now. Thank you, Tristan. And let's get some play going here. And hold on, let me widescreen this a little bit. There we go. I love those little hook wraps you throw, by the way. You throw a number of them in here, and they're really pretty.
Boop, boop.
Little boop in the nose. There we go. Now, who are you fighting here?
Duke Yuri. Yuri the
Yeah,
Yak
does he have
Slapper.
a nickname too?
He is Yuri the Yak Slapper.
I love that.
That's his name. Atilius is the one that's on the left side of the screen.
Yeah, talking about that, how big is your shield, by the way?
20 inches wide by 24 inches long.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a tiny little guy.
Yeah.
You do a great job at the edge of range, keeping the edge of range, threatening those tips, and still being able to cover the distance to throw those. Like that hook, again, that it's not hitting, or he's catching a little bit of it, but
it's sliding down the back edge of the shield.
Yeah, but they're pretty.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I really like about this set here in particular too is, and I think people should keep an eye on this. We talk about leading the fight all the time,
Yeah.
And you are in the lead.
Oh yeah,
from the beginning, and it's not more aggressive, but you're pursuing the fight. You're leading the fight.
I want to show what people mean by leading the fight. Watching this pass, who's kind of and you know, again, the other person's giving some space, but you have the initiative, or you know, essentially the intent to do something.
Yeah.
And see this right in here. That's all nice intent, pushing. The other piece I really like about this, I'm going to pop back. Watch your feet. You do a really nice job of constantly keeping distance in your feet. You got nice gathers. See pulling some of those gathers. The feet are always at a specific distance, even when you're stepping forward. So
Thank you.
That was really good.
So he caught me with a thrust, and he, instead of jabbing, he set it and then pushed. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Place and push.
Yeah, that's what we were discussing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done, man. So last blow is hit, and what's racing through your mind?
I got to do it again.
Panic.
I literally thought I had to do it again, because moments before that, before we did procession and before we did everything, Sean and Timmer came up to me and they're like, "Hey, you're potentially about to reign." And one of my questions was, well, I got to beat him. How many times do I got to beat him? And he went into the finals undefeated. So technically he had two lives. And so I was under the impression that I had to beat him four total times.
Yeah.
No, I did not have to beat him 4 total times.
That's probably good.
Yeah, they just reset it to just straight 2 out of 3 for the finals.
Yeah, that's what we do too.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I did not know that. And so I back off, and Yuri's laying there and he's like, "Just give me a minute." And I'm like, "Take all the time you need, dude. Like, no sweat off my back." And immediately I'm swarmed by 15 people. It felt like 100. And they were grabbing my armor. They were Bigger Brand specifically was like, I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, what's happening? Like, I got to beat him again. Like, I said, I got to beat him twice. And Bigger Brand's, "You just beat him twice. I need your helmet, Your Highness." And I'm like,
I'm sorry, what?
"What?" I need to take your helmet off. You just won Crown Tournament.
That's
And
awesome.
It was literally a whirlwind after that. I mean, you guys know, you guys have won Crown, and you know what happens, especially after your first one. His Grace said, literally everybody throws themselves at you to help, and you don't know why they're throwing themselves at you to help, but they're like, hey, I will help you. And now we need to go do all the things and sign all the paperwork.
Yes.
and
collect all the items.
Collect all the items. And I did not really have a lot of time post tournament to contemplate what had just happened. It was the days afterwards. So that's the best sum I could give you about what happened after Crown. It was just a complete shock. So
yeah, it's those days afterwards. The first time, it's like, okay, now I got to figure out the process. Now I got to talk to people that have done it, so that hopefully I can, just like fighting, I can understand this process and this battle better, so that so you can succeed, right? I mean, because that's what you want to do for the people.
Yep, exactly.
You want to be a king. So
yeah, and so that's kind of where, like, after I realized just the magnitude of stuff that I didn't know that happens behind the scenes, behind the veil of the SCA, that the Crown does, and that and not just the Crown, but like you guys, like Duke Sean, he such a major role in the things that people will never see. And that's the beauty of it. Like, that's the beauty of the SCA. That's the dream.
That's behind the curtain, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of what we do as royal peers that I think, to a certain extent, the populace should not have to know that we're doing. The populace at large, I think, should be able to just enjoy their event and enjoy the medieval aspect. And once you've sat a throne and you've seen how the sausage is made, there are some things. What has been seen cannot be unseen.
Yep.
And I think that's part of our job is to that's how we allow the magic to happen for other people, so that they can just enjoy it. And it's work sometimes. And once you set the throne, your life in the SCA will just never be the same.
Yeah, to good or bad, right? I mean, the good part is you're going to be a royal peer. You have a door that's open to fight some of the best people in the known world. On the other side of that, you're going to be crowned. You're going to find possibly less chances to fight. You're going to find that sometimes there's an ego build that's a bit hard to get past. You're going to find that because you're not fighting as much and you can fight a little sloppy, that you get a little sloppy. So just be aware of those things.
Okay.
That becomes a big piece.
That's kind of what I was thinking, or I've been thinking about, is exactly that, like taking a little bit of time off from fighting at events, because that's literally all I've done. That's my sole purpose, is to fight at events. Like that's for a long time. That's what I thought it took to be something in the SCA, is just be a great fighter. And yeah, it's part of it for sure. It's definitely part of it if you want to make a name for yourself. But I don't want just that. I've started platesmithing, and I'm currently apprenticed under Nicholas Cacilio. So he's helping me do phenomenal things on that side. So I think, honestly, winning Crown is going to be probably not the best way to go about learning this side of the game, but it's also going to be very much a trial by fire learning this side of the game, which is what I need to do anyway. So
it's a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
So I got a question, obviously, and I was kind of in my group. You're the first in Black Company to win a crown,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
So did you get an outpouring of craziness?
Yes. They're very supportive. The majority of people that I've talked to have been nothing but supportive, and there's going to be probably 50 or 60 of them coming to coronation. So yes, it's been an outcry of just support and love. And that in itself right there shows me that how much has changed over the last couple of years, or the last, I'm going to say 10 years. So that after I won Crown, Their Majesty Roman, he asked me to swear fealty to the Crown. And that was something that I'm not against, but just for personal and moral reasons, I ended up giving my sashes, that is the representation of my oaths and fealty to Black Company, to my best friend, Relfing, and he's my current elder of the Black Suns. That's the tribe we're in Utah. So I gave those to him and told him to hang on to them. And then in 11 months, when I'm done, whenever my reign's over, we'll see what happens, and I'll end up taking those back. So it was a pretty. I don't think a lot of people realize just the magnitude of that part of it, but it was a very emotional time for me. Like, there's video, like I was literally like, hands were just shaking. Like it's good though. Like I'm glad that I did that, and I'm very thankful that Ronan gave me the opportunity to swear fealty to the crown, because it's been a question of why did I do that, is how can I expect the kingdom to swear fealty to me when the crown, or to the crown when the crown is on my head, and me not swear fealty to them. And so that's something I've always lived by. And
I think that's important for people to know too, that was always a no-brainer for you. Like when you enter, you know the deal. Like, you know what's going on when you enter Crown. Like, you know, if you win Crown, it's like, and especially you not being a peer. I mean, the only people that are required to be in fealty are knights.
Yeah.
Nobody else is required to at all. Right. Yeah. It's optional for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, you could have been in fealty or not been in fealty. But, you know, yeah, it's one of those things that you knew going into this, and you knew when you fought our crown 3 years ago too. It's like, if you end up winning, then fealty is the thing, because that's what this whole thing is based on, a feudal system, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important for people to understand that when you went into that, because I had spoke for you at this crown, and we talked about it a bit. It's like, it's a no-brainer, you know. There's not some, you know, lengthy discussion that needs to happen about whether or not I'm going to be in fealty if I end up winning crown. Like, and I think people kind of miss that a lot, in, you know, with your history, you know, coming from a mercenary house, and just because you haven't sworn fealty doesn't mean you're not going to, when, like, that's what the job is. And I think people miss that.
Well, and really, I mean, there's not a lot of, in some ways, there's not a lot of difference here. You swore fealty to people of Black Company to support that organization and that group. There's no difference in the job that you're doing right now. You're swearing fealty to the kingdom and its people, right?
Exactly. Yep.
You're just swearing fealty to a broader group of people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Much broader group of people.
Yeah.
So many people.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. I want to ask a little bit about your training.
Okay.
What you know, how has your training changed in the last 5 years? And was there anything different going, like, and again, I know you didn't train for crown per se. I mean, you've always just been training to be a better fighter, but is there something in how you've been training in the last 5 years? Is there something recently? I mean, you took some time to do some jiu-jitsu. I fought you in August, and I told you that experience was.
That's it. That's the biggest difference is.
It was huge.
Yeah. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or boasting, but honestly, like during, like, post-pandemic, and when I really geared up for the 2021 crown, I felt like I was a really decent. In my head at that point, I was a really good fighter comparatively to the other fighters in my field, like, or that are on my level. I felt like I was one of the top, and I kind of got burnt out. There's some stuff that happened in real life and then in Black Company, and I just was like, you know what, I need to take a break from the SCA. And then the world started getting even more chaotic. Not to go down that road, but I felt a little bit scared for my family. Not in terms of like we were going to be attacked or anything like that, but I just like, all I have is stick fighting. And yeah, that's a great self-defense, but I'm not always going to have a sword in my pocket. So I need to learn something. And so that's when I picked up jiu-jitsu, and it just literally took off. I 100% took a deep dive into jiu-jitsu, and Master Lash, and I talked to Master Lash about it, and he's like, well, that's because you were serving two masters. You were serving SCA master and you were serving jiu-jitsu master, and jiu-jitsu master is currently the one that is got you by the hook or whatever. And so I was like, that's a great way to put it. And so I just took off with jiu-jitsu, and then now, obviously, like as we do, we come back, we start to get that itch to get back in armor and get back into the SCA. And I did, and I started doing a couple of local practices because Big Brand had started building it back up again, and has done a really phenomenal job of establishing a good base again here. And so I started showing up to that and just fighting. And then I reached out to Sean, and he said that he was going to do this training camp for, I don't remember the knight's name or the Duke's name that was there.
We had Duke James Greyhelm came down to do some training.
Yeah. And so I went out there and fought with those guys. And, before that, Timmer came down to do a demo at, it's called Might and Days. It's just a small town outside of where we live. And it's just kind of like a car festival. And then we did some fighting. And so that was the first time I got back into it and fought higher caliber fighters. And I did okay. I mean, it's definitely very sloppy comparatively, but then when I went to Duke Sean's, I had a couple other practices in, and the biggest difference that he noticed and I noticed too was I had a really bad habit of fighting where I wanted the fight to be versus where the fight was previously. Just forcing mechanics, forcing shots. Like, I'm big, I'm fast, I'm physical. So it was very easy for me to just dominate in that aspect, especially in SCA fighting, because I could throw more shots than you could throw in a faster period of time and just overwhelm you. I mean, and it for a long time. It was successful for quite a while. And then when I went to jiu-jitsu, obviously that doesn't work. The littlest guy, he's a close friend of mine. His name's Royce. He weighs like 160, and I at the time was like 240, and he just folded me up like a ragdoll every time. Like no power, no nothing. And so it made me shift gears, take a step back, feel the pressure of where we're going, how we're moving. And that doesn't have to be a physical pressure. That could just be like they're pushing to your left or they're pushing to your right, and then kind of adapting to that. And so without even really realizing it, Sean pointed it out. He's like, you're actually like, you're responding very well. You're not forcing.
Well, what I saw when I fought you is you very clearly had a better vision for the fight. When I talk about the vision of the fight, I don't mean what targets you can physically see. I mean how you see the fight develop, and allowing the fight to develop organically and naturally without, the other side of that is without the fight happening to you. But like you said, when we hear people talk about, I have to go out there and impose my will on my opponent. And I got to tell you, that's just a lot of work. And it is. And it's often fruitless work when you're like, it is easier to get somebody to do what they want to do than to get them to do what you want them to do. And so if you can find out what they want to do and you can capitalize on their tendencies and their, the things that they want to do. But you have to be able to see the fight develop. And I think that's something that's the thing you got from jiu-jitsu that you didn't have before. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes a certain amount of faith to know that when the opportunity presents itself, you'll be able to recognize that opportunity. And again, if you're trying to make opportunities happen, now you're fighting against really the natural order of the fight itself. And that was the thing that I noticed, is that you picked up a vision for the fight and being able to see what is happening in the fight. And when you can see the fight more accurately, you can respond more accurately, and really, it gets really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and easier over time. I guess, here's the question is, did jiu-jitsu teach you patience? Because really, I think we have people that are physically strong that just go out and, again, try to force everything. And if you can throw enough, I played in that game early off, and if you threw enough, aggressive enough, you got a lot of wins. Sometimes you would lose to people that probably you shouldn't, but it's an easy place to get into that 80-20 range, and some people are satisfied with that. But it's
statistically, when you throw 1,000 shots in one fight, one of them's bound to land, right?
right.
Or you can throw one really good one.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, did jiu-jitsu teach you to understand that overwhelming somebody is, obviously isn't always the way, and being able to see and manipulate and take that time to figure out the fight was more. And this is a hard thing, and maybe it took jiu-jitsu to do this for you. In fact, because it was a new sport for you.
Yes, it was. Go ahead.
I think it's important to understand too that is kind of a culmination of several different activities. I don't want people to get the impression that if you're right there at the top edge of your unbelted pool, that you just go out and do jujitsu for a couple of years and you're going to come back and
that's not how it works.
Right? That's not quite how this works. It's like you needed that experience. Yes. To be able to kind of pull back, that aggression, I guess, that you were working with previously, and you needed to be humbled in a different arena in that way, and in order to pick that up, and we all are, we end up being like, our fighting styles are like very personal, right? Brannos' fighting style comes from a heavy boxing background, right? That has heavily influenced his fighting style. Al-Anon's style is heavily influenced by basketball experience prior to being in the SCA. I don't have any martial arts background prior to fighting. I don't have really an athletic background besides fighting. So a lot of what I've come up with is strictly influenced by SCA combat, but it's also been influenced by Brannos and Ronvalder and Al-Anon, and my experience is largely SCA, but it's so vast and varied. And all of our fighting styles it is very personal. And it's like you will have influences. The core of who I am as a fighter is still very much Brian Tarragon, right? But I'm influenced by so many other people that didn't see Brian fight 20 years ago. They have no idea, but I do. And I know that's my core, but my style is very different from Brian's, right? And style is very personal, and you needed that experience in the jiu-jitsu to find your style.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
and that's not necessarily going to work for somebody else.
No. I think that's what makes it beautiful, though. Is that what makes it personal? Is it's your path, it's your journey to self-discovery of figuring out how you want to fight. And then when you're in Crown Tournament or any other major tournament, and you realize that moment, you're like, hey, I'm not fighting my fight. Such as I did, kind of going full circle, like realizing, hey, this isn't my fight. Why am I fighting this way when I know I should be fighting this way because I'm better at it this way? To continue to go full circle. That's exactly, like, I was going back to that old habit of forcing the fight where it wasn't, and didn't have the vision of where the fight was. Was it nerves? Probably. Was it the intensity of Crown Tournament? Absolutely. And it's so easy to fall back into those habits. But then when I switched gears, I started winning, and then I ended up winning the tournament.
So let's go back to that. I was just saying, when you switched that gear, what was it? I mean, what did you? I mean, was it just? Did you have that moment where you're like, just let it be? Just be who I am. Be be
Take a step
true.
back. Take a step back and breathe. Let it like you don't. I didn't need to be so going into it. Ralph and my best friend, he watched my first Crown tournament, and he was there. We recorded it. You guys can go back and watch it, and then compare. If you guys, the audience, can go back and watch it. Something like that. And compare and contrast. The first couple fights I went in like a practice, lazy, not really in it, and ended up getting picked off. And this time around, Ralph is like, dude, like you can't do that. Like this is Crown. You're not here to practice. You're here to win. I mean, I know we were talking about it's an evaluation, yes, but sometimes it's you're there to win. And this time around, don't tell my consort, but I was there to win.
I think she knows.
Yeah.
I wanted to show myself that I could still do this. That's a better terminology. That I could still fight. That I was still. What's the word I'm thinking of? I was still.
You're competitive.
Competitive. Thank you. I'm still competitive. And I can still run with the best of them. And
well, it's one thing to recognize that you got in a bad headspace and that you're not fighting your fight.
Yep.
But it's something else entirely to be able to fix that in an instant.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I was getting at. Was there anything in particular that allowed you to re-rig, or was that it? You take that moment and grab a handful of dirt and like
that was it. Just taking the. So I remember stepping off after I fought Crispin, or was it? I think it was Thorhall the second time. I don't remember. Duke Gabe was like, "You have 2 minutes," and then you're fighting Magnus, and I knew at that moment that something had to change. Previously the 2 fights before that, I switched gears, but now it was back to Magnus, and I knew we'd already been through this 2 times in a row, so I knew the outcome if I fought that same fight. It took me a little bit. So I took my helmet off, took a drink of water, took a breath, and literally just woosah. And like you said, just disconnected. Like I disconnected from winning Crown. I disconnected from letting him suck me in. And I was just like, let's just fight and see what happens. But I'm not going to do the same thing. So
nice.
Sorry, my dogs are distracting. Hang on. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, talking about a place, making that change in the middle of a Crown is always difficult, right? But we have to be able to make adjustments. And I think in this place that it sounds a lot, it's kind of interesting because it sounds a lot like Josh Watkins, who used to do that in the middle of chess tournaments. He'd walk away from the board, go outside, run a little bit, come back in, wet his face, hands, clean up a little bit, and just relax his brain and get it back into a good place so that he could go back into flow and execute the way he should be executing.
It's a pre-fight ritual. I was actually talking to your squire on this before Crown. One of the things Daniel brought to me is he's like, I need to work on flipping that switch and just going from 0 to 100. And I have one of my pre-fight rituals is it's kind of a shock factor. You have to. For me, it's a little bit of a sting, like if you take a rubber band and snap it on your hand to kind of like shock your brain. I smack my shin. I have shin guards, so I just smack my shin and it kind of like hones in. So I think that also plays a part of it. So taking the time to do scoop the dirt out, rub it on my hands, smell it, like it just kind of resets the brain. And if you don't have one, I highly suggest you guys develop one.
Yeah, we've talked about that a bit. I know a lot of my tourney ritual involves all the salutes. And the last salute I make is to my lady, and I'll take a knee and I'll take just a second. Sometimes it's a second to breathe. Sometimes it's a reminder. In the Crown I won in 2018, I'll tell you, after Brennan had told me the story about Mariano Rivera throwing the cutter in the World Series, I went in that Crown, and every time I took a knee, I said, "Throw the cutter." And it was just my reminder after what I did with Floki, my reminder that I'm a world-class fighter and you need to act like it. Like, you just going, like, you are good enough. And it was just that reminder. And so it's always a little bit something different, but that moment where I take that moment, when I stand up, I salute my lady. She is the last thing I see before I go do bodily harm to somebody. Yeah. And after that, pretty much everything disappears after that. Turn around, salute my opponent. But my pre-fight ritual is fully ingrained in that entire process of doing those salutes. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I highly recommend having a ritual. We've talked about it before. Basketball players who get to the free throw line, and you get these opposing players behind the free throw line. They're waving shit and they're like making all this noise. Basketball players don't see any of that.
No,
you can make all the noise you want. You can do all the crazy shit you want to do behind there. They don't see it at all, because their ritual is ingrained in millions upon millions of free throws that they've thrown out there. And the reason that you get 80%, 90% free throw shooters is because everything is exactly the same every single time. And that's that pre-fight ritual you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. That's one. So develop that audience.
Well, hey, we got about 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of wrap up a little bit with 5 things from the 5 things guy.
5 of them.
So
not come prepared. No,
so after doing, and again, kudos to you for doing that show in the beginning. You had a lot of great guests on there.
Yeah, let's just real quick. I want to show some people, because I posted this on. I kind of assembled all yours and posted it one time a while back, because I thought, hey, people need to go take a look at this again, because again, this is part of the learning part of becoming a great fighter. And we have found and seen this over and over again now, that by understanding more, by seeing more, you become a better fighter. So just so for everybody to see, there is some great people in here, and you got a chance to, of course, Duke Sean, and let's see, we had, I'm going to shoot over to the page.
Yeah, Floki there,
Dietrich, Bellatrix, Kuhn,
Hans,
yep,
Stan.
Exactly, Timothy, Uther,
Tamiki, yeah,
you had over and over, Hans, right? Over and over again, you had a number of people. Do you think that influenced a lot of your education on how you fight?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it did. First, just being able to interview these great people and then taking just little tidbits has definitely helped out a lot. And it's kept me motivated too. And to this day, I still get probably 5 or 6 views on every one of them every time I check. So, it's still slowly growing. I do regret not getting you on there.
Yeah.
Brannos.
I actually had my 5. I should have found my 5 before coming to the show.
Yeah, but my job at the time, I was going back and forth to Pennsylvania for 3 weeks at a time and then 2 weeks off, and it just fizzled out. And then the SCA came back, and you guys still
lots to change.
I don't know, so it's pretty cool. But, all right, so my 5 things to stay on track. First and foremost is physical conditioning. I personally train about 4 times a week now. just a typical like rudimentary strength training. Lift the barbell, put the barbell down. That doesn't have to be anything fancy. Doesn't have to be anything overly complicated. And then I also do about 30 to 45 minutes of that, and then I do 15 minutes of high intensity interval training, which I usually just run because I love to run. So it doesn't, and that's it. 45 minutes a day. Have that. Thank you, man. Be done. So that's number one, is just physical conditioning. I feel like that was a very key concept in me winning Crown as well. I definitely feel like I won the cardio game. Had Magnus, because he told me like at the end of it, he's like, dude, I couldn't lift up the sword anymore. I was just completely gassed.
He gassed out. Yeah.
And had he not gassed out, I feel like there could have been a very different Royal Highness on the show right now. And same with Yuri. Yuri's 60 years old. I'm young. So I definitely feel like had we've been on similar levels in terms of physical conditioning, it would have been a totally different fight. And I mean, any given Sunday, it could go either way, but I feel like that should be at the top of your priority list if you want to compete at a high level in this sport. Plus, it helps, going back to the injury prevention shows, it helps keep those shoulders, those elbows, those wrists in tip-top shape. So that's my first one. Number two, ask. Seek out people. We live in a society now that you can do video calls like this. Like, I'll be the first to admit, after I won Crown, I went right to Sir Helga and do 2-stick spin and was like, here's my videos. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, and let's go to the next level. Because I want to be a better stick, and I know that I have more potential in that. And it's not to win the next Crown. It's because I have this big shiny target on my back, and people are going to want to come at me. And now's the time. My wife wants to reign eventually in 2026 or 2027. So yes, I'll be preparing for that, but now is the time to be capitalizing on I have 11 months until I can fight in the next one. So I have 11 months to prep and to become a better fighter and help her reach her goals in the game. So by that, I mean, ask other higher caliber fighters, travel to them, do video calls, send them video of your fighting, get analyzed, have them help you isolate and identify your deficiencies. I'm pretty sure everybody had said that in this episode or in this show, on 5 Methods show. Almost every episode that specific thing was said is travel and fight higher caliber fighters and ask them to critique your fight and hone it in. So that's number 2. Number 3 is definitely pel work. And really, like, you don't have to hit the pel hard. Pel work is there to just sharpen the blade, to sharpen that aim. Aim small, miss small. It will help get those shots in those narrow gaps that you're looking for. It will also kind of helps out with balancing your training program, like your strength training program. So if you feel like when you're throwing your flat snap, if your shoulder's starting to get overly sore or your lats getting overly sore, that should tell you that you have a deficiency in your muscle, and you can capitalize on that. If you want help with that, don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you don't know how to reach out to me, reach out to one of these guys and they'll put you in contact with me, and I can help you with that side of it.
Well, I'm sure they'll be able to find you now, Your Highness.
Right.
It's artemisia.sca.org.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I'll be right face plastered right there on the main page.
Right on the front of the page.
Yep. What are we on? 4. So just take time in the helmet. And remember that you're not there to win practice. You don't get anything for winning practice. You're there to learn. And if there's anything that I have learned from jiu-jitsu and the SCA, is that it doesn't matter whether you have a white belt or no belt at all. It could be your first day. At practice, it could be your 9 millionth day of practice. Everybody at that practice can teach you something. So always go into it with a beginner's mind and listen to what everybody has to say. Because the beauty of being a beginner is you see things that us more experienced fighters are calibrated not to see anymore, because we've been over that 1,000 times. But this guy who's never seen this before is like, hey, what about this? And then you're like, wait, what? And it can happen to anybody. So listen. Number 5 is be patient. It takes time. I've been playing this game since 2004, and it wasn't until the last 6 years that I started even grasping the concept of being a decent fighter. Compared to the 2 gentlemen that are interviewing me right now, like, they've got a lifetime and I've got 5 years. So be patient and take your time with it. And that's all I can say. Just it's a lifelong journey, and you're not going to get there overnight. So stop trying to rush the process. Enjoy it while you can, because one day we're going to wake up and, well, that shoulder is just not what it used to be. So
yeah, well, and I've known more and more people at any age that, you know, have had a neck injury or a spinal injury that has basically been, you keep doing it, you may never walk again.
Yep.
Yeah. And they have to make a decision. So, you know, it's be, you know, make that effort, be diligent about it. And, you know, we're not making money. We're not making, you know, but there's some satisfaction within ourselves that we're looking for.
I think it's the best
We
sport.
just want to help. We just want to help. That's the biggest thing I've learned. And it's very humbling. Just like I said at the beginning of the show, just the sheer magnitude of how many people want to help, just to help. And knowing that you guys are still doing this, and it's cool. It's very cool. And like you guys were saying, like, just all the Crown tournaments and the nights that have come from stuff like this. And honestly, I probably would have never even known half the Dukes that I interviewed, like, because they're clear out of Kingdom. Like,
yeah,
what did I have to do? Just ask.
Just ask. Wait, you ask a Duke to talk about himself? Let me get that right.
Who does that?
You know, that's the thing we've said for a long, long time on this show, is that the people who have the information that you want, those people are dying to give that information away to people who are actually going to do something with it. I mean, we're happy to talk about it, but man, watching somebody actually do something with that, oh man, that's a crack. That's like heroin right there. I mean,
it is, man.
And yeah, Atilius, watching you, take those 5 things from each of those people you talked about, and really apply those things, and really do something with what's been provided to you. Has been super fun to watch. And yeah, I mean, for all the success that we've had, it is far more satisfying to me to watch somebody else win Crown with the help that I've given them. It's far more satisfying than winning Crown myself.
All day long, man. All day long.
And winning Crown is pretty cool. But yeah, watching somebody else and helping somebody else get that's even better.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
The people who have the information, we want to give that to you, for sure.
So just ask. That'll be 6. We'll do 6 things from the 5 methods guy. 6 things. Just ask.
Yeah, there you are. That's the last one everybody should have, right?
Yeah, just ask. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here a little bit. Your Highness, it's been a pleasure having you. Like I said, it's been a joy watching your progress. And really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your insights and your story. Brannos, you got any final thoughts for him?
No, I really hope you have a wonderful reign. It's somebody mentioned it's the hardest, best time you'll ever have, right? And you get a chance to meet more people than you ever thought. And it's hard, but I tell you, I've had 2 reigns that probably some of the best different years, but some of the best years in my SCA word throws. And this is from somebody that I really don't care to do it again, but not because of that, just because, to tell you the truth, sometimes what you really enjoy is something different a little bit. And I enjoy fighting a lot, and I didn't get, I got a lot of it while on the reign, but not as much focus as I would have liked to. So, that's one reason that I don't necessarily play in there.
Yeah.
But enjoy it, man. There's a lot there to enjoy.
I will, for sure.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank Tristan in the background. Hey, Tristan, you want to pop in here real quick?
He's hiding out.
He's hiding out there.
There he is.
Hey, I want to thank you for doing production for us.
You're welcome. And thank you, Atilius, for coming on the show. It's great to have you back here at Coach's Corner. So don't be a stranger, but feel free to drop by when you're not quite so busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Anytime. Yeah.
All right. So next week we got an episode coming up. Barry's going to be hosting that. It's going to be an episode about how to find the right knight for you. If you want to be a squire, it's a little bit about how to find the right knight. I'll be on for that. We got Barry and Sir Sive is going to be joining us on that as well. So that should be a fun one as well. So please tune in next Wednesday as well. Same time, same bat channel, right? And thanks everybody for joining us. And thanks, Atilius. Thank you, Your Highness. Again, thank you for joining us. Everybody have a good night.
Yeah.
Night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.